So since a lot of folks are going to be shooting out in the world on their phones and without tripods, I wanted to talk a little bit about how to stabilize your footage in Premiere. So I have a couple shots here. All of them are handheld. Most of them have little to no motion besides what was picked up by the person shooting them and holding the camera in their hands. And that's about the best you can hope for footage that you're gonna stabilize. Sometimes you'll want to stabilize out a pan or something like that, and the rules will be slightly different. But by and large, this should sort of put you on the right path to stabilize anything. The one thing to be wary of is stabilizing is not always going to be the best option. Sometimes handheld is just handheld, and you're gonna that's the aesthetic that sort of works for the video. And it's very case by case dependent. So in Premiere we have what's called the warp stabilizer, and you can find it by just going into your effects tab, and you can search stabilizer or you can search warp or anything. It'll drop down. It looks like it's in video effects, and then distort, and then warp stabilizer, and you just drag it right over top of it, and that's going to open up in your effects control tab up here. So if I open that, now you can see sort of what's going on behind the scenes here, and so it's going to analyze for a moment here, and so while it's analyzing, I'll just go through the options. You can smooth motion or you can no motion, which is the tripod mode in Final Cut. And then there's a whole bunch of different ways that this will analyze the method with which to create this, and you can preserve the scale if you absolutely need all the information on the corners of your screen. So those are all your set options, and then there's a couple different options on how it might do these things. I would recommend sort of stabilize only, stabilize and crop, or stabilize, crop, and auto scale, with the knowledge that when this stabilizes, it's going to be moving the frame around a fair amount. So that's just something to be aware of. So now that it's analyzed, we'll just play it back real quick. And so it looks pretty warpy. It's definitely moving back and forth. The corners are a little bit funny in a way. It's definitely not observing sort of any laws of physics. So we'll need to analyze that a little bit further. We can start that off by changing subspace warp to either perspective, position, scale, or position, or one of these three, just as a good starting point. And it looks like perspective is not doing us much better either. So I'll jump up to position, scale, and rotation, which once again is not doing the most amazing job. So for now, it looks like this clip just it calls for position. And so when we play it back, you can see it moving around a little bit more, but it's definitely smoother, which is good. That's what we were shooting for. And if we change that to no motion or tripod mode, then it will remain similarly. You'll just get a little bit of this funny motion around the edges, but it won't necessarily move our character back and forth, which is kind of what we're hoping for. So from there, you can also, if you're going with position, scale, and rotation, or perspective or subspace warp, and you need the corners of your screen, you can always preserve the scale there for those as well. Less so for position. And we'll go back to smooth motion. And so that seems to be, this smooth motion plus position seems to me like the best version that we'd hope for in here. We can also pull this back and change up and not auto scale and just stabilize and crop it, and that gives us a pretty darn smooth look at it. And if we're going for no motion, I think that would also be our best choice. So realistically, when you jump in here and you're starting to apply these stabilizers, things can get a little bit wonky. It should be warned that it will change up the scale of things a lot. So if it does this, you're just going to want to grab it and drag it up, and just make sure that it's sort of cut to the side and it matches the crop of all your other videos in your timeline. But yeah, once you get it in there, just start going through these options and kind of bouncing them around. There's a few more options here that I won't get into, but you can, if it just still isn't looking very good, you can always jump into advanced and start to try to fine tune it as best as you can. But it is just about playing around with the options and seeing what works best for what circumstance. What worked best for this clip may not work the best for this clip, since it's a wider shot. It's dealing with more motion in the corners, and vice versa for this one. And although this one would probably be very similar to the one that we had done prior.